You've given feedback to a direct report or employee. They've promised to change and yet they still take no action. What do you do next? We're going to be discussing this topic with people skills expert Eleanor Shakiba. Eleanor, this can be an extremely frustrating problem to deal with. How do you go about giving someone feedback and yet they choose to ignore it? What do you do?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to question whether or not they're ignoring it. So just because they haven't changed doesn't mean that they've deliberately not taken your message in. So it could be that they don't remember the feedback. It could be that they thought they understood it, but they don't understand it now. Or it could be they tried once, nothing useful came out of the change, and so they're now going back to their old habits. So the first thing to do is look at your own assumptions and see whether you think they're deliberately ignoring the feedback or not. Then if you decide that they are ignoring the feedback, it's time to think about how to deliver the message again. And so when I talk about feedback, I talk about whether you need to repeat it or whether you need to reinforce it. If someone's ignoring your message, you probably need to reinforce it, which means going back, reminding them that you've had the conversation in the past, letting them know that nothing seems to have changed, asking them what's going on, and then creating an action plan for change. But if you think they didn't take the message on the first time, you want to repeat it.
So what do you mean by not taking on the message the first time?
So perhaps they didn't really understand that you wanted them to change. Maybe your feedback wasn't specific enough. Maybe they thought it was a good idea at the time, but when they got back into real life, it didn't really make sense in the real world. Okay. So if that's the case, it's time for you to reword the message and repeat it in a different way so that they can understand what it was that you want them to change. And what I'd suggest that you do in that case is be really careful that you're being clear and specific about what's happening now and what you would like them to do in the future.
So what are the steps involved in that?
The first thing to do is to ask yourself, how clear was I the first time? And remove any generalizations in what you've said. Okay. So instead of saying, you need to make some changes to your timekeeping, what you would say is something along the lines of, I need you here by 10 to 9 every day so we can open the office at 9 o'clock for our customers. It's really specific information that you're delivering. And then let them know that you believe that they can change, that this is a simple thing. Mm-hmm. So say, and I know that if we work out the right process, you'll be able to do that really easily, and give them some incentive for changing. And that's going to mean that we're creating a much better environment for our customers, and we're not going to get so many agitated people at 9 o'clock in the morning. So give them a benefit statement as well.
So now you've delivered a clear message the first time, but what do you do when it's been ignored? What's the next steps there?
So now it's time to reinforce. Yeah. Okay. So in that case, you start the conversation by reminding them. Last week we had a conversation about opening the door at 9 o'clock, and I've noticed that 3 times this week the door has still been closed at 9:05. So I think we need to have a look at what's stopping you from making the changes that we discussed last week. What's going on from your perspective? At that point, they're probably going to come up with reasons why the door hasn't opened. Now, there could be a range of reasons, and it may be that those reasons are within their control. So you've got to separate out what's within their control and what's not within their control. So if it's, I'm too tired to get up because I stayed up playing computer games all night and I missed the early bus, that's something where you're expecting them to change their behaviour. But there could be other things that are getting in the way. So if they have a child and the child is refusing to go to school in the morning, that's not so much in their control. So you might want to look at how can we accommodate you for a short period and get someone else to help us out by opening up the door. So you have a look at what other alternatives do we have here. But you let them know that's only a short-term solution. So within the next 3 months, we need to sort it out. So you're going back and you're making sure you're opening the door by 9 o'clock.
These techniques work incredibly well for a senior person giving feedback to a direct report. But how would you give feedback to a peer in this situation?
That's a tough one. A lot of us feel worried that it's going to create some sort of tension in the relationship, and that's often about the way that we think about feedback. We see it as an attack, as something that's hostile. But if you change your mindset a little bit and think about it as a gift to the other person, you're offering them the opportunity to change. It's probably easier for you to come up with a way to give the feedback. However, if you have given the feedback in that gentle way and the person still hasn't changed, then you need to think about, does it really matter? Is there a consequence that is really important here? And if there is a consequence, like the angry customers, you're obviously going to have to do something about it. So what you do is offer the colleague the choice. We can sort this out between ourselves, or we can take it to the manager to help us work this out. What would you like to do? So you're letting them see that you're prepared to escalate, but you're giving them the choice around that.
That's great advice, Eleanor. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise today. We look forward to catching up with you next time.